University. The brainchild, Roy Thacker, president of Loadsurfer, came up with this idea a number of months ago. And you know, as an industry, we're always looking to get better, and we should be. And how we get better is by networking. I'm a firm believer of that. I love to network. I think we all benefit from it. We all gain from it. And at the end of the day, the industry becomes better. We've had a lot of calls, and a lot of different companies ask us why we're doing this free and what's the ultimate motive, and there's got to be a hook. Well, the hook is industry betterment. And you know what? At the end of the day, if somewhere along the lines you decide to give Loadsurfer a trial, or to get involved, that's great. If you don't, that's great too. At the end of the day, we get to meet somebody new, meet some old friends, share in some good education. We really hit a home run with our first session, because when Ray Haight and myself and Tina and Glenda and Roy sat down, we said, you know, we want to get a couple of big hitters for the first program. And we took a look out there and really seen what kind of mirrored the goals and objectives of Loadsurfer, and we've got two outstanding presenters. The first one that you're going to hear from is going to be through our technology-based program, which we plan on continuing to do. And the second gentleman you're going to hear from him live. The goal is to have these things either once a month or every other month, depending upon the desire of the customers. But that'll be decided by you. Here, so the first speaker is Winston Ashton, and he's the president and CEO of TransCredit Incorporated. They're out of Jacksonville, Florida. He first excelled in the air forwarding industry as a regional manager in the air cargo business in Atlanta, Georgia. And in 1993, Mr. Ashton opened his own trucking company that progressed from a local carrier after deregulation to U.S. freight systems. And he was a contract carrier and licensed brokerage operation. In '87, Ashton left the hands of transportation industry and began a career in transportation credit management. And that's how he's best known. I've had the opportunity to hear this gentleman at the Truckload Carrier Association conference. He's a great presenter, but he also has something that's very, very important to us as an industry as we move forward, especially as freight capacity picks up. You need people like Ashton, and you need companies like TransCredit Inc. So, Winston, if you can hear me?
I can, thank you.
Awesome, you're ready to roll.
All right, good morning, and thank you all for coming today. Thank you, Roy and Loadsurfer, for making this presentation possible. Before I begin, I'd like to note that some of the statistics that you're going to hear is from the U.S. market. I know most of you are from the Canadian market. We have served the Canadian market for over 15 years, but we're not a big player. Our commitment, however, to Loadsurfer and to you is to change that. So let's look at what TransCredit has learned over the past 24 years that will give you a better chance of being successful in the trucking industry as a whole. We're going to talk about freight bills, of course. And first up is, will I get paid? Maybe not. And why? Most of you extend credit to your shippers. That's just the way our commerce works. So any extension of credit has inherent risk. And if you don't do your due diligence towards credit approval, then you're surely operating a risky business. Corporate failures. This is AKA shippers, AKA your customers. Over 76,000 last year alone closed their doors. Let's take a look at the corporate clock for a moment. This always astonishes me whenever you take these kind of stats and put them down into small numbers, but just look at this. We're talking about every minute and a half a company in the U.S., again, these statistics, close their doors. 7 minutes it takes for somebody to declare bankruptcy. So while this presentation is going on, we'll have half a dozen companies, declare bankruptcy. Every 4 hours, ownership of a company changes. And every 60 seconds, in our files, a shipper's credit score changes. So these things happen very, very rapidly, And that's why it's so easy for you to be caught unaware and, unfortunately, not get paid. So how do we minimize the risk? The question that every one of you should be asking your credit manager, all the way up to the CEO, is what positive steps should you be taking in how you view your customer's credit? TransCredit has some suggested changes that will give any transportation company a heads up toward providing a solid structure for managing your risk and will keep your company in good health, especially through these trying times. First, you must identify where your potential for catastrophic losses may occur. This is the time to get real with your assessments. We ran the numbers between 2000 and 2009 at TransCredit's intensive collection department and found that 78% of all bad debt experienced by truck lines and brokers came from customers that had been on your books for 2 years or more. Not from new accounts, everybody watches those like a hawk, but it's that customer you've had for a while. So how does this happen? You did your due diligence and ordered a credit report on the shipper 3 years ago, and he's been paying you fine ever since. Otherwise, you've lulled yourself asleep by the tunnel vision of your own payment experience and having a clue as to how that customer may be paying other carriers. You may be his favorite carrier, currently paid on time, but other carriers are experiencing slow or non-payment. Guess who may take the hardest hit in the end? So let's look at how you might avoid this hit in your cash flow. First, you need access to the customer's credit records, 24/7, 365, that reflect how they're paying other transportation companies compared to how you're being paid. Secondly, you need a system that will alert you to declines in the shipper's payment trend, what we call it TransCredit days to pay, or decline in financial stability, the credit score. A computer-controlled alert that emails you a notice that there has been a decline in their ratings is a necessary part of a proper credit management system. Those two steps are preventative measures and will see you safely through most issues. But just what credit evaluations must you make before you commit to the load? This obviously varies from carrier to carrier and depends upon the financial state of your company. But here's a winning solution for you. First, you need to pick a number, a freight bill amount that you are willing to risk without performing any type of credit check. This is similar to a deductible on an insurance policy. You will be able to reduce your credit research costs in this fashion. In most cases, we're talking about $500 or less. And a caution here, I'm speaking about a single load from a new shipper, not multiple loads at $500 each. Next, you should set preset levels to help your credit department or dispatch make quick yet informed decisions. You know, one of the things about reading credit reports that I found is that, you know, you give a credit report to Jim and you give one to Mary, and they're both looking at the same information. They can come up with different data. And in today's world, you have to make these decisions quickly, or some competitor may well walk off with a load while you're trying to make a credit decision. So let's set up a quick go-to guide to analyze the credit report. Hopefully, you'll be utilizing credit reports from a source that specializes in transportation. If there is a credit score, choose several levels of risk and apply a credit limit in dollars. If there's days to pay trend, repeat this procedure. Years in business, very important. Apply similar credit limit. Then use the average credit extended by other carriers or a report of other carriers' accounts receivables to tweak that average. So on screen, you see a quick approval guide. And this is how it should look. You set your limits depending upon your own company, but the important thing is that you look at credit scores and you determine revenue levels that you're willing to extend. And you may even have areas, as you see, that is a no load, so it's real easy to make that determination. And in this type of a system, you simply add the pre-approved credit limits that you've set. You ascertain an average. Give an example. If you have a credit score of 92, you got $6,000. Days to pay, 40, $4,000. Years in business, 7, $10,000. So we've got an aggregate here, $20,000 divided by 3. You got a $6,600 credit line, and that's where you should be. And compare that now against the average credit extended or averages of those accounts receivable from other carriers, and you can tweak that accordingly. Anything outside these parameters should require a more in-depth look at the credit report or reports and perhaps management approval. You should review your credit limits against your outstanding accounts receivable at the end of each month. The people that are in the financial business, like the factoring companies, do this constantly, because accounts that are substantially over their credit limit should be red flagged for immediate review. So we talked about, will you get paid? How about, when will I get paid? And here we're talking cash flow, and cash flow is king. You know, you can certainly go broke from lack of revenue or from poor operations. But one of the most overlooked causes of bankruptcy among truck lines and brokers is lack of cash flow to pay your people and your suppliers. You know, having $50,000 in your accounts receivable outstanding does you very little good when they cut off your fuel cards for late payment. What happens when the customer falls beyond your payment terms? I'm not going to address in detail the obvious ones like the fuel cards or employee stress, management frustration, embarrassed collection calls, etc., etc. What you need in cash flow, you may require the services of a factoring firm to help shore up your cash flow. Here the cost is pretty easy to count. But, you know, even if you're well financed and have enough past profits to cover the gap, there is a real cost of money. Perhaps better stated, it might be a cost of lack of money. So how do we keep this cash flowing? First and foremost, I will assume that you ordered a credit report before you committed to pick up, and you already have a days to pay average that meets your terms.